Okay, welcome to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. We have a big show today. First, discussing the asylum seekers. In particular, we're going to have an attorney with the CUNY School of Law who's going to talk about what we're doing to help all those who are trying to seek asylum in our city. Next up, we have a council member who's going to be here, Council Member Lynn Schulman. We'll be discussing the illegal smoke shops, cannabis smoke shops, and what we've been doing to shut them down and making the city safer in all aspects. As you can see, we have much to get to, so stay tuned. Today's verdict starts right now. All right, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. We have with us today Liliana Yanez, the co-director from the Emerging Needs Clinic. She's with the CUNY School of Law. How are you doing today?
Well, thanks. How are you?
Good. So this is a very important topic. We're going to be talking about the asylum seekers. It's certainly relevant because every time you put on the news, you know, we're dealing with the issue and trying to make it more comfortable for those who are trying to come in seeking asylum. But before we do that, let's know a little bit about you. Tell the viewers about who you are and how you got involved with this type of project, if you could.
Sure. So I'm an immigration attorney. I've been practicing immigration law for over 20 years now. And for a while, I taught at CUNY School of Law about 10 years ago. I taught immigration in the immigration clinic. And recently, Dean Huertas, the dean of the clinical program, and the dean of the law school, Dean Setti, got together to propose this program to mayor's office. Actually, it wasn't really a proposal. It was more the mayor's office working in concert with other CUNYs, including CUNY Citizenship Now, to deal with this issue.
So CUNY has always had an immigration program. In other words, they've had faculty there and they've had immigration classes, but this is a way to reach out through the community to help those who really are in need of immigration services. Am I correct?
Yes, actually, CUNY's always had an experiential program, which is a program that teaches future lawyers how to be lawyers. So a hands-on practicum.
Now, I remember way back when I was at St. John's Law School, we had a program with the Corporation Council so that if the city needed attorneys to act on their behalf, if you were a student at a law school, or certainly at least St. John's Law School, you'd be able to work for the city. And I did. So I worked for the city as an attorney, even though I was only a law student, but it was only in a limited role. It looks like your program is trying to do that for law students in the immigration field. Am I correct?
That's right. And actually, the history of CUNY is that no student can graduate from the law school without having an experiential program, without doing a clinic, without representing clients. So it's a requirement at CUNY. And this Emerging Needs Clinic is a brand new clinic offering to the students.
That's so smart. It's just so important. But let's now back up to the asylum seekers. Refresh my recollection. When did this really begin in terms of, listen, people have always been coming into the New York City area seeking asylum. That's nothing new. That's for hundreds of years. My question is, when has it recently happened, which has now become the focus of the debate as to what we can or what we can't do for those coming in?
So yes, you're right. New York is as we know, is receiving to many immigrants. But the recent crisis began about a year and a half ago when Texas and Florida began sending refugees. And I think it's important to classify that these people who are coming are refugees. They are fleeing harm from somewhere. They're fleeing harm, they're fleeing war, they're fleeing crime, they're fleeing poverty, they're fleeing climate change that doesn't allow them to live safely, to live comfortably, to have adequate food and shelter in their own home countries.
Where in particular are they coming from? I mean, everybody thinks they're coming from Mexico, but they're actually not. I think they're coming from Venezuela. They're coming from all over South America, correct?
They are coming from all over, not just South America, but they're also coming
From Africa too. Yeah.
from Africa, from the Middle East, and the entry point has been through Mexico. And then the states like Texas and Florida started sending those refugees to New York.
What are your thoughts about that? Let's talk about that. Are they allowed? Is that legal? Is it illegal? Is it immoral? What are your thoughts about the fact that our southern states are shifting the burden to our northern states?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know that it's illegal. I mean, it's immoral, perhaps. It's not right to be shifting people from different places. At the same time, though, the federal government has to act. And so this is the issue now, right? That New York is looking to the federal government to provide resources so that we can deal with this refugee crisis.
What was provided in the past before the influx? What did we generally give with respect to asylum seekers? What did we generally give?
Well, in the past, access to the services that asylum seekers want was happened more rapidly. So people got access to work permits in under a year and a half. Right now, it's taking anywhere from a year to a year and a half to receive a work permit. Once you get a work permit in the United States, you have stability. You can, start looking for your own shelter, working legally in the United States, paying your taxes in the United States. So those things happened more frequently in the past.
Well, now we're at a point, it's a breaking point, because our city, there's the influx of people. There's really no more room for anyone to be able to go anywhere we need to go. Oh, they need to go. I mean, they go to the shelters, they end up outpouring out on the sidewalk. They go to the hotels, they end up roaming the neighborhoods. There's no more room. And yet we're trying to expand it in such a way that we're making sure that nobody should be homeless. What can we do for a situation like this? Before we even get to the immigration and helping them become legal, what can we do just to make sure that they're comfortable while they come off the buses and they're here?
I think the federal government, the state government, and the city government have to all work together. We have to, we talk about the refugees and moving them around and everything, and think about yourself. Like, how would you react in this situation? How would you feel if you, arrived in one state and then were sent to another state without being told, and you are in trouble? You have experienced trauma. You have your children. You have your family. You want safety. So that is the one thing that we have to provide.
What are we going to provide now with respect to immigration services? Let's put on our immigration hats. Just want to know you. My mother has been an immigration lawyer for most of my life. She went to law school when I was about 7 years old and graduated when I was 10, and then went into the field. So I know a little bit about it. It's a very stressful field. The law is constantly changing. It's a difficult area of the law. I know that from her own when she's been practicing. But what are your thoughts in terms of what can we provide as immigration attorneys or law students in the immigration field? What can we provide to help these asylum seekers, Liliana?
So the Emerging Needs Clinic grows out of that. How can we help? What can we provide? And it is to, in conjunction with the mayor's office and CUNY Citizenship Now, we will be holding events. So to immigration lawyers that wish to volunteer, we would love your expertise, and we will hope to file applications for asylum in order to secure these refugees with a place for the future. So we will be doing mass events with the students, right, and teaching them how to lawyer in a crisis. So this current crisis is these refugees seeking asylum in the United States. The city may have a different crisis in the future, right? And so we will hope to teach the students the skills to not just deal with this crisis, but to go on and assist the city to be New Yorkers.
Well, so what are we trying to do in the crisis? Are we finding them shelter, or are we making them legal? Or is it both? What are we doing in the crisis? What's the number one thing that we're trying to do?
They are all number one things, right? Shelter is number one thing. Legal is number one thing. This, the Emerging Needs Clinic, is a component of all the different things that the mayor's office is doing. We will not be dealing with shelter. We will be dealing with their addressing their legal needs.
Okay, so let's say I unfortunately come out of a hotel, no place to sleep, but I possibly get a room in a shelter, who knows where, and I want to become legal. I want to stay here permanently. Where do I go to find you? What do I do? And who's going to come over to me and tell me that they're going to hold my hand and help me?
I'm glad you asked that, because in addition to the events that we will be holding, these legal clinics that we will be holding so that you can get status in the United States, we will also be partnering with Silberman School of Social Work and CUNY's medical school to provide services for people who are dealing with trauma. In addition, not just the trauma from their home country, but the trauma of living in a shelter, of sleeping on the street. And at these events, we will be able to refer them to either the School of Social Work or to the medical school and other providers around the city. We'll also be working with our community-based partners who are already on the ground doing all of this work. And we'll be partnering with them to provide access to other services, not just legal services.
Final thoughts, we don't have too much time left. Where do you think we're heading in this particular area? Is this going to get better, worse, or something else?
It's definitely going to get better.
Okay.
It's definitely getting better. It requires us to all come together. And by us, I don't mean just lawyers. I mean volunteers. I mean New Yorkers, to come together to welcome the stranger, welcome these people, and then help them get stable, and then they'll find their way.
All right, Liliana Yanez, I want to thank you very much. And hopefully you come back in the next couple of months and give us an update as to what's been going on and help us through this trying time.
I'd love that.
All right, stay with us. Today's Verdict has so much more coming up right after this.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Oh, how did I get here? I can see now.
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
STEM is everywhere, like here, behind the scenes of The Walking Dead.
When we break down clothes, we tumble it with trisodium phosphate, rock salt, and dish detergent.
We stitched together images of our model and created a 3D set that could be walked through in a VR headset.
We're able to turn 12 walkers into 1,000 walker boards.
STEM can create new worlds on and off the screen. What will you make with STEM? Get inspired at shecanstem.com.
Dear moms and dads, what you have achieved here today is going to help us and our futures. It is why we are coming up on stage to collect your diplomas.
You know it's true.
Mom, we love you always.
Everything I do,
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
All right, welcome back to today's Verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. We have with us today new guest, council member Lynn Schulman. Lynn, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Welcome to today's verdict. I don't think we've ever met before, but it's nice to meet you. So, by the way, where is District 29? Just so we know.
So District 29, it's interesting. District 29 takes in, it's in Central Queens, and it takes in the neighborhoods of Forest Hills, Kew Gardens, Rego Park, and a small piece of Richmond Hill. But with the redistricting next year, I will lose most of Rego Park, and it will be Forest Hills, Kew Gardens, and a big part of Richmond Hill.
I grew up in District 26. That would be Queens Village. Went to Van Buren High School and and even St. John's Law School. So big fan of Queens. Although now I live in Manhattan with my wife and my son and work with my family in the Bronx as lawyers. But Queens is in my heart, a council member. I just want you to know that.
Well, interestingly enough, my parents, though they lived in Queens, I was actually born in the Bronx.
In the Bronx. Okay.
Fun fact.
Triborough. Love it. All right. So tell us a little bit about what made you get into the council member business, and how'd you decide to become a council member?
Well, I've been I spent my personal and professional life in healthcare advocacy. During the AIDS movement, I saw a lot of neighbors and friends die because of the inaction of government, and so that spurred me to get involved in healthcare, which I've been doing a lot of. And then when I was asked to run. I ran actually 3 times. So I won the third time. Third time is a charm, as they say. I ran the first time in 2001 when term limits first went into effect. I've been on the community board. I've been extraordinarily active in the community. I grew up here. And so it's such an honor to be representing the community where I grew up.
Let's talk a little about these smoke shops now. They're all over. Right, they're in the Bronx where my office is. They're in Manhattan. I'm sure they're all over Queens. But before we get into them, let's talk about the history of cannabis, if we may, in New York City. Hasn't always been legal, and now it is. So maybe you could take us back, I don't know, a few years or something, to where we actually decided that this can be legal, and now we have a problem, and that's illegal smoke shops.
So the state passed a law saying that cannabis should be legal. I mean, people have been using it anyway. And I think the genesis of it was that people in certain communities were being prosecuted for using it, whereas people in other communities were not. So to bring some equity, they legalized the recreational use of it. And so to do the legal weed shops, they are taking people who are part of the criminal justice system at the time that this all occurred and who are trying to get their lives back together and saying, hey, we're going to give you licenses to do this. You can have a business, and it would work out. What has happened is the state has been slow to give legal licenses, which, I'm a city council member, so I don't have authority over that. But as a result of that, a lot of these illegal shops have been opening up, and they're a public.
It's always difficult getting a license for the city for anything. That includes your marriage license, and when you're not around anymore, your death certificate. I mean, there's always red tape with getting fishing licenses, whatever types of licenses. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but what do you have to do to get a cannabis selling license? What do you have to go through a background check? Do you have to take a physical? I mean, what do you got to do to get a license?
Well, the license is actually issued by the state, not by the city.
By the state, I'm sorry.
By the state. So I don't know what their criteria is, but it's been, I think people are aware that it's been a very slow process.
All right. So now, instead of doing that and going through the process and waiting, you just open up a store, and where are you getting your cannabis from? Like, how does that work?
So I think the people that are opening these stores are not the ones that are waiting for legal licenses. I want to make they really want to try to do this legitimately. The folks that are doing this are, enterprising individuals who they open a storefront, by the way, the weed that's sold at these illegal shops is adulterated. I mean, we had a hearing about this a few months ago in the city council, and it's adulterated. So it has E. coli that they found in weed that they've taken out of these shops. They've found salmonella. So there are some toxic substances. We don't know what's in them. So that's one. Second is, so that's a public health hazard. Second is the public safety hazard, because for the most part, these businesses are cash businesses. And so that creates an environment that attracts criminal element. And as we know, there have been a number of shootings and stabbings, one of which occurred in my district, of people that are using these shops.
All right, so what are we doing about it? What can we do about it?
So up till now, the enforcement mechanism has been against the shops themselves, trying to get them to close. But the problem is when they're raided, they open up the next day. They obviously have a system where they can get product all the time. So I had the thought that instead of trying to push against the shops, because it's really difficult, why don't we go after the landlords, who, by the way, are not really supposed to rent to places that conduct illegal activity to begin with. So that was my idea. And now I have this bill that's now enacted.
I want to stop you there for a second because, I think I brought this up to you off camera. Landlords don't always know what's going on inside the premises that they're renting to. I know that with personal injury cases that I bring on behalf of clients who get injured, a lot of times the landlords don't know what the tenants are even doing, in there. Behind closed doors, should we say. And by the way, just because they say they're doing X doesn't mean they're not doing Y. Because you're never really in there. That has to do with a whole right of reentry in a lease, whether you have the right to reenter and see what's going on in there. So what do we do about the landlords who really don't know what's going on?
Well, what spurred me to create this legislation was we had the city council, as I said earlier, had a hearing a few months ago where we found out that when a illegal weed shop is raided, there's a letter that gets sent out from the city to the landlord saying you are renting to a business that's conducting illegal activity. So that's notice number one. What happens is that nothing happens after that first notice, but when the sheriff comes back and re-inspects the place, that's when the landlord will get another piece of paper saying, hey, you're going to now get fined for this because we already gave you a notification. And so the landlord has two avenues there. One is they have 15 days to respond to that letter. And that's the first fine, by the way, is $5,000. Every subsequent inspection then is $10,000. And the landlord also has an affirmative defense. As a lawyer, you understand that. So, which means that if they don't have to evict the tenant. If they start eviction proceedings, that's an affirmative defense, and then they won't get fined after that.
Well, so where are we heading? What's the next stop on the train?
Oh, the next stop on the train, it's a great stop. So the next stop on the train is the Real Estate Board of New York is very much behind this. They have sent out a letter already to their 17,000 commercial landlords throughout the city saying, with a synopsis of the legislation saying, hey, this is a bill now. You have to comply with this. We do not want any illegal activity in any of the premises. So that's number one. And that's a big list. Second is that I'm in conversation. The administration has been very much behind this bill as well, the mayor's office. So we're working with them to try and get letters out to other landlords saying, and that's not a notification, but just to tell them, hey, this is going on. This is what's happening. This is law now, just so that they're aware. So we're going to see what happens. And then we'll the sheriff's office will be conducting some of these raids and everything else, and we'll start the process. And hopefully this bill will do one of two things: either prevent landlords from renting to these places, because who wants to try and get thousands and thousands of dollars of fines, or they'll say, hey, like this, once they get a notification when the place is raided the first time, they'll just start it without waiting for the second time.
It's certainly a new normal with the cannabis. And I mean, everywhere you go, you're smelling cannabis. I mean, I'm not telling you something you don't know. I don't know what we're going to do about that and what the next step is. You're allowed to smoke outside, so I don't know. But it's just everyone's dealing with a whole new area. And I guess we'll just leave it at that. But I want to thank you, Councilmember, for coming on. Hopefully you'll come back, give us a little bit of update about what's been going on in District 29.
Love to. And we're gonna try to do this all over the city. So yes, I would love to come back and let you know what happens with this. And by the way, the NYPD and the Sheriff's Office have also been working with me on this. So it's very exciting. And the folks that actually run the legal weed shops have been very happy about this. And their workers are part of a union. I don't know if you're aware of that. Retail Workers and Department Store Union represents the legal weed folks. And by the way, when we had our press conference to announce that this was enacted, we had it at a legal weed place. I got to tell you, when you go in, they check your ID, they go put you through the system, they check your age, you have to go through a whole bunch of security. And
probably more than they do if you go into a place to buy alcohol, where they don't even check your ID many times. And it's good that they're doing that. So all right, listen, have a very good rest of the summer, and we will hopefully see you soon.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, stay with us. Today's verdict has so much more right after this.
Thousands of kids start vaping, and I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is vaping? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You didn't turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, Backpack Kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
What time yet?
It's time.
Fun starting time for dinner.
Oh, terrific.
Donating pet food is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Well, that's all we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us, and of course, you, the viewers, for watching. If you have an issue or a topic you'd like to see on a future edition of Today's Verdict, feel free to email me at davidlesh@proxnet.org. Until the next time, know your issues, reach a verdict. I'll see you in 2 weeks.